Hello, football fans. Welcome to week 13 of the Scuffed Football Podcast. This is Noah. I'm Ted. I'm here to cover the previous week, talk stories, scores, fantasy, gambling, the whole damn thing. I think a place to start is probably back to Thanksgiving and talk about a couple of Thursday games. I start obviously with the Bills and the Lions. Man, this was fun. This was genuinely the best game of the day, in my opinion. There were a bunch of good games, but this one, it was entertaining start to finish, really good. My big takeaway, first off, the Josh Allen does still have it. We had some questions about him in, previous weeks after a couple of losses and a not so great performance, but he definitely took over at the end of the game with 20-something seconds to go. Man, still got it.
I mean, agreed. We had discussed maybe there's some problems with the Bills, and not just for the Bills, but last week we had specifically discussed them. Again, even the fact that we had talked about the Bills, their strength of schedule and everything, and their wins, I think this actually speaks a little bit more. Yes, the Lions aren't as good. Again, we've said they aren't a free win, but the 5 days to prepare for the game after just going right out like that, I think it was a better statement for them. It was a good game. It was a hard fought. So the fact that they had the resilience on a short time to come up with that and, have a decent win was pretty good.
Absolutely. I also thought this was pretty significant for the Lions. I know that they've lost a bunch of games this season, but they've been competitive in a whole lot of them. I mean, the only time they've really gotten blown out was pretty early on in the season against the Patriots. But what did you see from the Lions, and how do you think that translates into next season? What kinds of things are they looking for to maybe win some of these games that they're just barely losing this season?
Right. It comes down to execution. Again, last season they were terrible, and they had added almost the same pieces essentially. And then coming into this year, no one expected them to be good. I know we hadn't. Again, just a few lucky bounces, and they could easily be 7-4 instead of 4-7. We could be looking at an entirely different team. So again, I think the momentum, or the next season goal, I guess, would be just kind of keep that same core and try to keep that momentum that you guys are having. Again, 4-7 is not bad, especially for the Lions. We're always in games. Just a few lucky bounces and they could be a lot different. So
absolutely. I'll be interested to see what kind of pieces they pick up and put together in the offseason. I mean, there's still questions about Jared Goff, I guess. I know he's had a much better season this year than last. But I do think it's interesting to see what his future with Detroit could look like, or if that's somewhere that they decide to upgrade, maybe draft if they, get somebody decent early enough. The other part for me is you and I were actually messaging towards the end of this game that the Lions very easily could have been winning that game for a significant portion of it if they had not missed a field goal. Which it's pretty incredible to if you would ask me at the beginning of the seasons, are the Lions ever going to have a lead over the Browns? You'd be like, well, fuck no. But I think they played this game.
The Browns, maybe. The Bills, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, well, my bad. I can't talk. It's fine. Either way, though, at the beginning of the season to say the Lions over the Bills at any point in time, I would have told you absolutely not. But the fact that a missed field goal is what separated them from being in the lead for a portion of that game, I think is pretty incredible.
Yeah, agreed.
Moving on, some more Thursday games. We watched the Cowboys and the Giants. This one is significant for me, mostly because I think that it's pretty realistic that both of these teams could get some playoff wins and we could end up seeing each other again. Obviously, the Cowboys took the win, but the Giants played pretty handedly. They kept it within the spread, which I thought was not necessarily fairly placed at 10, but what did you see? What do you want to see again? What'd you notice about this one?
Again, I didn't spend too much time watching this one. It was right when we were sitting down. But again, we expected a brawl here, and it was the in division was always better games. Again, this could be a lot. Again, when it comes to seeding time, the Cowboys now have that tiebreaker. So again, realistically, yeah, agreed. I think both teams could and might be in the playoffs this year. So I think this goes a lot to speaking as to where that will go.
It's also interesting to me to watch. I gave the Cowboys a lot of credit last week for putting together an offensive scheme that actually functioned. Their offense looked really unstoppable against the Vikings. And I just didn't see that same kind of flair, that same intensity against the Giants. Obviously, their offense still did fine. They look like shit, right? But a lot of that creativity and the dynamic use of all of their players just kind of wasn't there. And it was interesting to me that the Giants defense, which we've raved about all season long, wasn't good enough to keep up with a more boring approach.
Right. I mean, we discussed it last week where we had said, like, yes, it was good that the Cowboys had this offense, but we need to see more consistency before we see them back. Again, like, this is kind of what I meant. Like, I assumed, I feel bad to say it, but I assumed their offense just wouldn't be in the same place. Again, we've seen different types of Cowboy teams, like strength-wise this season. So I'm hoping they can find it. But again, it was definitely interesting to see not the same cohesive unit.
Yeah, and to move on to the Vikings that got trounced last week, they did beat the Patriots, but I still watched them struggle quite a bit. Their offense never seemed really all that fluid. Their defense still didn't look like it was entirely on pace. I mean, especially against a Patriots team that scored 3 offensive points the week before. How much of this game did you get to watch? What'd you see from the Vikings, and what do you feel about them going forward?
Honestly, the Vikings, I have no opinions except for Justin Jefferson is just your guy. Like, that's it. Like, that's the whole team. Again, we've seen him carry the Vikings to multiple wins. I think we kind of saw it again. Again, we haven't seen Kirk Cousins be like an all-star quarterback. And again, against I don't want to say a lowly Patriots team, but they haven't been performing like we're used to. They're not near the top or anything. And so the Patriots keeping it that close was actually pretty surprising to me. I'll be interested to see how they can come back. But I think it was a good sign they came back from a blowout to put up 33. So I will give them props for that.
Yeah, it's a good win, but I guess like what I noticed was more watching like as a playoff opponent, right? Like the Vikings are obviously still good. They can obviously still win any given week. Excuse me. They can play against good teams. They can play against not so good teams. Like they can win on any given week, but I guess just even watching them win, they still didn't feel like a fluid unit that I like. Sorry, Vikings fans, but I don't think you're making it to the Super Bowl this year. Like, it's going to be hard for me to convince myself that they're better than the Cowboys, better than the Giants, better than the Eagles. Like on a good run through the whole playoff run. I don't know that they can do it week after week, which is really weird to say for a team with 2 losses on the season.
Right.
All right. Moving on to Sunday's games. I guess the first place to start is to talk about that Jets-Bears game. First off, I gotta apologize for being like, why the hell they benched Zach Wilson? Because White made it very, very clear as to why they did it. He had one hell of a game. Every time you looked up, he was scoring again or making another really good pass. Their offense looked explosive, and the team really rallied behind it. I will still stay on the horse of I don't understand why they pulled him there, but I get it, and their team did benefit from it. How do you take this Jets win? What do you think is significant, even if it was the Bears without Justin Fields?
So Bears wise, I think that again we've had the same issue with the Dolphins. We saw the Dolphins without Tua not be as explosive, not be as cohesive, and I think we kind of saw the same problem with the Bears. I think this year, like Fields has brought a level that's new for him and new for the Bears, and they're like all of us aren't used to it. So again, seeing the Bears just put up 10 and kind of be flat is kind of what I expected for a team without Justin Fields. Like we've seen him be the explosive part of that offense. Jets wise, I told you guys so. White's the way to go. And again, I agree. It was kind of like a weird timing thing to take him out like right then, but I'm glad they did. Again, now we're looking at a 7-4 Jets. I still hate the Jets, but White is the guy there. Like I like that choice. Major props to the Jets organization there, but
I think it'll be interesting to see what the Jets can do later on in the season. I mean, obviously 7-4 is almost guaranteed to get them in the playoffs at this point. But like they're right there with the Bills and the Dolphins for the division. So I mean, it's not even impossible for them to get a home game at this point. Do you believe that White is somebody that could carry them through a few playoff wins, even if you don't like their Super Bowl hopes?
I don't know about playoff wins. I think he's good enough to get them there. Again, we've only seen such a limited sample size for White. Again, like last season, we saw him do decently, and then like we kind of fell off, and then they put him back into the starting lineup and he does great. But again, more consistency would be good and make me more comfortable in saying that the Jets could have like a chance to really make some noise in the playoffs. But again, against the likes of the Bills, Dolphins, I don't think the Jets with Mike White will have in the playoffs will have the same success that he's found.
I'll be interested. I mean, you mentioned it a little last week that like being a leader, the team chemistry, like, and you watch those guys genuinely get excited for White. You know, I don't think that's insignificant, especially watching the way that they played. I mean, I genuinely believe that their defense is Super Bowl good. Like, I put that defense on a really good offense, and they're Super Bowl favorites, right? It's just that it's the Jets, and they can't do both things. But if the team stays this cohesive, this passionate, and strong, really, against the rest of their opponents, I mean, I don't see it being impossible that the Jets steal a playoff game somewhere. Next game I've got is Bengals and Titans. So the Bengals just keep getting better and better week after week. Pretty early on in the season, we talked about that the Bengals Super Bowl run last year. I mean, a very significant portion of their wins were one-score games. But even in tighter scoring games, the Bengals continue to improve and look better and get better. What'd you see from the Bengals?
I mean, again, we're starting to see them get a little bit better. Like, we've known that they have the potential, they have the talent there. Again, I agreed. Like, I think if this was week 1 and it was Bengals Titans, I think it would probably be flip-flop. Like, the Titans would win 2016. But again, we are getting later into the season. I think the Bengals are getting a little bit better at being able to close games. I mean, again, it's all still close, so I don't feel comfortable in saying that they're back. I would like to see more statement wins and maybe like a bigger win difference point wise, and then maybe I would be able to say that. But again, the Bengals are looking a little bit better. I'm happy about that. But I'm not going to say they're back yet.
Yeah, we can't do that on this podcast. We know what happens, but I mean, I don't think the Titans are any slouch, man. I think they play a really good defense. They play a really aggressive style of offense, and aggressive, not like yards downfield, but running through you. You know what I mean? Like physically aggressive. I think the Bengals putting up this win is impressive for them. And like I said, as we were making picks last week, like I expected the Bengals to win, but I didn't expect them to necessarily like turn this into an offensive showcase and blow them out by 1,000,000 points. I think this is a really good win for the Bengals. The Titans aren't anything to scoff at, you know. I'm pretty impressed with the Bengals, but I do think that for the Titans, this could indicate that like their season's going to end pretty soon. I think they're pretty much locked into the division, but knowing that they can't compete against the Bengals might make me think a little less favorably of them. You know, even if they win their division, get a home game, I don't know that they can do it.
Right, agreed.
The last game I want to talk about is Sunday night. Eagles and the Packers, high scoring, fun football. My first big talking point about it, where the hell has this been from Aaron Rodgers all season long?
I mean, again, we've discussed. It's interesting. I only watched this game because last week, essentially, you were like, pick up that Christian Watson. And I was like, all right, you know what, whatever. Cool. So I did it. And then all of a sudden, I'm just watching the game and I'm watching a star be born, I feel like. And like, finally, I think we've seen, I think we're starting to see that Rodgers has like a number one option again. Something that we have like discussed before. I don't think he has the same supporting cast. Like, I don't think all this, and you know, it's a weaker team than we've seen, obviously. But again, like we're starting to see them kind of start to kind of where I thought the Packers would be this season. Like this game was what I thought they would be like this entire season.
It was just fun football, man. Like the Packers have been so boring all season long. I mean, we've talked about it several times that he's got less than 10 pass attempts by halftime in multiple games now from maybe one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. I'm still of the mindset that Aaron Rodgers is a good enough quarterback to make a bad receiver good. And we just haven't seen it this season, whether it's because they're not passing, whether it's because he's off, whether because he's maybe not as good as we think he is. Like, whatever the reason, like, where the hell has this been all season long? He was throwing really good passes. He was finding the open guy, doing his reads. He was mobile within the pocket even. Like he had a ridiculously good game. I just want to know what the hell the Packers have been doing to be this bad this far into the season with the 4-8 record now, to not have done this weeks ago.
Right. I mean, agreed. Like football would be so much more fun if, we could see another Rodgers in the playoffs. So again, but it's good to see that they're making the changes, I think, even though it might not be for long, but it's good to see that they're willing to make the change.
Yeah. The one thing that I think for the Eagles is significant is this game is going to be a clinic for future defenses to play, or future offenses to play against the Eagles defense. I mentioned it a little last week, but the Eagles are really good against the run when they set up for the run. They're really good against the pass when they set up for the pass. And I think the Packers play calling did a lot of creative things. They hid different strategies, bootlegs, draw plays, that kind of thing that really exposed the Eagles defense. All credit to the Packers for being able to put together that kind of offense. But I think against a better team, the Eagles defense has shown that there can be some struggles. And if other teams are watching this film from this game with the Packers offense specifically, I think the Eagles have the opportunity to get exposed.
It would be interesting to see coming these next few weeks, kind of see. But yeah, agreed.
Yeah, they do have a couple tough opponents in the works still. So I'll be interested to see what this turns into for the Eagles, specifically on defense. The rest of what I've got left is mostly just some quick hits, some really fast topics. Most notably, the Browns get Deshaun Watson back this week. I won't give them credit for playoff hopes. I mean, they're 3 games back and there's only 6 games left in their schedule, so I don't know that playoffs are realistic. But how much better do the Browns get?
I think they vault themselves into playoff contenders. Again, maybe not this season, but this coming season. I think that these few games, the 6 games, is going to be great for Deshaun and the team to build chemistry. Again, I don't think the expectations on them are we need to make the playoffs this year, because they had already known that their franchise guy was going to be missing 11 games. So, but I think that from what I've seen Deshaun Watson in the past, from, leading Houston to the playoffs, being the star that he is, I think they become dramatically better. I think there's yes, Brissett isn't a bad quarterback, but he's not Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I guess for me this season, it just kind of almost feels like a lost cause, right? I recognize how good Deshaun Watson is. I mean, he's one of the best athletes in the game. Obviously, incredible passer, super mobile, makes a really dynamic game. My issue is that, if you're not going to compete for the playoffs, why do you put him in there for 6 games? Letting him on the practice field for first team reps still gives him those opportunities, right? I mean, I genuinely, if I were the Browns, I would be taking this like it was a preseason opportunity where you give him a couple of drives at the beginning of the game, see what you've got, make sure he feels comfortable. But don't risk him getting injured. Don't risk giving up your offense for basically a lost season, and realistically settle with a draft pick that's going to make that team even better next season. My thing too is it's really hard to jump into a professional offense and just pick it up and be good. The dude not only has he not played for the last 11 games, but he also hasn't been able to practice with the team. He's been fully suspended for those 11 weeks. Jumping in and learning,
not right, and not to even include the fact that he didn't even play last year. So yes, I think Deshaun, it will take that. That's what I'm saying though. I think these 6 games will be good for him. He finally gets to try the offense. But again, we haven't seen him play for over a year and a half. So it'll be definitely interesting to see.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't know that there's even a problem letting him have some game time. I'm not just being bench the dude, give him 2 full seasons off, right? But I also recognize that he's not going to jump in and have immediate success. Giving him a couple series to understand the offense, to make sure he's comfortable. Now he can practice with the team. He can learn the playbook a little better since he's allowed to practice with the team. I think that's more value than letting him get a full game under his belt. And, realistically, with the end 6 games when you're already out of contention, you're not going to know entirely what you have. Obviously, letting him play is a good thing, good thing for the Browns anyway. But I don't know what kind of value you get out of letting him play the full game every single time. I mean, like you said, they've already had a pretty successful offense so far this season. Brissett hasn't had a bad year by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing for him to continue getting some time and still playing while you're letting Watson really adjust into the system and get a full season under his belt next year. But next thing I've got is I want to talk about the Jaguars a little bit. We've kind of been up and down on them this season, telling you they were good, telling you they weren't good. They've had a really awkward season. This week they put together a really, really good win against Baltimore. So similar to the question I asked you earlier about the Lions, what are the Jags' opportunities to build for next year? What kind of pieces do you think they need to go get for this team to be a competitor if you can already win a random week against Baltimore?
I mean, agreed. Like, I think any team, if they caught any team on a bad week, like any team could technically beat like the Chiefs, right? If the Chiefs were playing horrible, I think any team has the ability. But I think for the Jags, it's kind of getting to that next step of like, we don't want to be just catch them on a bad week. Like, we want to be able to put up a fight on a good week, right? Like, so again, like the Ravens losing, it was pretty big. I mean, we never see Tucker miss in general. So him missing, again, let's be realistic here. 67 yards is impossible. Like, I feel like it should be impossible. But we've grown accustomed to Justin Tucker making those. So like when he misses, we're like, oh my God, he's so bad. But like he's not. Like he's been able to hit 64 consistently. Like 67, like it's so much, like it's still so hard. And I think that gets kind of lost. But again, going back to the Jags, I think it's kind of just like keep the chemistry, keep the momentum, try to find a piece that works in this coming draft. But I mean, if they're able to beat, decent teams on a given week, then they're starting to get better, but they need to reach that next step of being able to put up a fight against the Ravens on a really good week. So
I'll be interested, man. I mean, like we've talked here before that like I really don't trust Trevor Lawrence. Like I don't. I'm not saying he's bad, but like I don't know that all the hype behind him is necessarily warranted. However, I think that they could follow a model next season that's similar to what the Dolphins and the Eagles did this year. Put a bunch of pieces around him, really step up everything else while he's still in a cheap rookie deal, and see what you genuinely have in a quarterback. His receiving core isn't, anything super great. His run game's good. The Jags defense is mostly good. There's a couple places that they could probably improve, but you could do things relatively cheap to give him a much better team and figure out what you've got that I think really could turn the Jags into a more solid or stable contender next year. I'll just be interested to see what kind of pieces they can pick up and where that team assesses their own needs to be.
Agreed. And I mean, it's not like obviously we've seen the contracts that have happened for big name stars, but again, like you said it, the Jags are good if they leave the rookie deal, right, for Trevor Lawrence. But even ETN, like their run game is good, but ETN's also on a rookie deal. So like they have the choice there and they have the option. So that's definitely be interested in seeing.
Yeah. Obviously ETN getting injured this week, obviously like maybe not so great for the rest of the Jags season, but I mean, I also think that they're in a division where it's going to be tough to come back from anyway. The Titans have a pretty solid lead there, so not sure what's going to change about their season, but I do think it's notable. Some other injury news, the Dolphins had 2 of their starting offensive linemen get injured this week. At least one of them is suspected to miss an extended amount of time. They said, the last I checked, it was pretty realistic that the other one could also be missing quite a few weeks. Obviously, I think this is significant not only for the Dolphins themselves, but also what it means for the AFC playoff picture. I think it means that it's harder for them to go and get that first seed and take it away from the Chiefs. I think it becomes harder to compete for the division with the Bills. But with seeing what the Dolphins have been able to do this season, how significant is that offensive line injury or those injuries?
I think it's like tremendous. Like, again, you mentioned it. I think it's a lot to catch the Chiefs. Again, if I don't even know if anyone can, but if anyone realistically can, I feel like it should be the Bills, right? Like the Bills are also like right up in that conversation. The Dolphins were, I think, losing 2 of them. And again, for like a extended time, especially against a stacked like defense like the Bills, right? Like they're coming at you and you have like injury history with Tua as well. So I think that actually goes, it's like a double whammy for them, losing 2 solid pieces and then putting Tua into even more danger. Like, again, he is mobile again. He's able to run, but If I think you stacked up the Dolphins right now on the Bills, I think the Bills could easily eat the Dolphins.
You know, I look back at the past like 5 to 10 Super Bowl winners, right? And the teams that were favorites, the teams that won, the teams that really performed well were teams that got to the quarterback with just their defensive line. They didn't need to blitz every time. They were still getting sacks, getting pressure with minimal number of guys to drop the most back in pass coverage. Obviously, the Rams did it because Aaron Donald, I think he could 1v5 an offensive line.
Yeah.
The year that the Chiefs won, they had a really good defensive line. The Eagles was the same thing. They didn't run a single blitz all night. They continued to rush 4. Like the teams that we watch win Super Bowls, win the big important games when they matter, are we can get to the quarterback with 4. And I think it just becomes so much more difficult for the Dolphins to play some of these good opponents, like the Chiefs' defensive line, the Bills' defensive line, even the Eagles, the Cowboys, whoever comes out of the NFC. I mean, their defensive lines are all really good. I think this just makes it super hard for the Dolphins to look at this season as hopeful or confident in your Super Bowl run. Obviously it'll depend on when they come back, how healthy they come back, and what their backups look like. But I do think that this is a much more massive injury than it looks like on the surface.
Right.
The last quick hit I have is mostly just from me, and we can move on pretty quickly. But my boy Kenny Pickett did put together a game-winning drive in another one of the most boring Monday night games in NFL history. I just had to put that out there because I think he can do it. No one wants to make the point that the dude still hasn't thrown a passing touchdown in one of these drives, but my point is they still put it in the end zone, still worth 6 points. Doesn't matter who carries the ball in there. Anyway, we can move on. I got to get it in there, man. I got to. All right, so that brings us to fantasy. The place I'd like to start is you brought up some stats before we started running about Justin Jefferson and the kind of season he's having.
Oh, Justin Jefferson, man. It's incredible. So we had talked a little bit. I was reading an article. It said Justin Jefferson, again, he's like the number 1 receiver for most yards in the first 3 seasons. Like, remember, we just have to remember this kid's still in his 3rd season, right? Like, we don't expect these numbers from him. He's got over 1,200 passing or receiving yards, and like there's still like 6-8 games left. So like now we're just like waiting ahead here, and there's a realistic chance. I know we had talked, not realistic. There's an outside chance that we could see our first 2,000-yard receiver. I know we had discussed the just craziness of that in general, seeing that, and this is like as a stat, again, it's just absurd.
Yeah, I mean, you said he's got 1,200 yards. They've got 6 games left to go, which basically means he'd need to average 150-ish yards a game, which, like, Jefferson's obviously put up the weeks to make that, like, something that you can believe in, but it's so tough to keep that on average, man. I'll be fascinated, and we did mention earlier, too, before we started recording, that, like, we very may well be in the midst of one of, if not the best receivers we've ever watched. And he's only in year 3. If this dude stays healthy, he's going to have a crazy career. Congrats to all fantasy owners who managed to pick him up.
Yeah, agreed. And I know we had discussed like the conversation between like Bryce, Randy Moss, who we put above him. But again, these like all-star, all-Americans, like these were great Hall of Famers. They've played for like 20 seasons, right? Probably not 20, but like 15-ish. But like we're putting Jefferson in that conversation only in his 3rd season. That's unbelievable.
It's bonkers, man. It really, really is. What a fascinating season. Anybody else you notice from fantasy this week? Maybe some trends as we start to get towards playoff time.
Last week, no, I was just focused on Justin Jefferson. I'm not gonna lie, guys. This coming week, though, looking forward, I will be interested to see how much the Browns do use Deshaun Watson. Again, I know he's available in a lot of leagues, just because he wasn't able to play. I picked him up just because my belief in Deshaun. I feel like he's going to drop like 40 points on his first game back, especially against the Texans. He's back. I'll be really excited to see.
I'll be interested to see what he does. Like I said, it's hard to jump into an offense the first time. He only gets a week's worth of practice to come into his first game in a year and a half. I don't think that's insignificant, but obviously he's an athlete. He's a contender. Like if anybody could jump in after 17 or 27, games missed, and to just jump in and have a game, he can do it. I wouldn't have the trust in him to pick him up and start him, but I mean, maybe if I were in a quarterback flex league where you could throw a second quarterback in your roster, maybe. But even then, like, I don't know about the consistency. And then one thing you mentioned earlier was Justin Tucker missing that kick. I am a firm believer that like you pick up a solid kicker early enough if you get him. Obviously, don't take him in like the first 2 or 3 rounds, but a guy like Justin Tucker is always, with his consistency, is a dude that like you put value in drafting him a little early than other people are going to draft their kickers if you've got the space for it on your roster. Watching him miss a kick this week, my jaw kind of dropped. Like even though it was 67 yards, I could not wrap my head around the fact that Justin Tucker was on the field and missed a field goal. Thought that was pretty
good. I mean, agreed. We've seen him knock it down from 64, 65, 66. Like, it's just, and then just see him line up. We're like, oh, 67, he's got this. But then like we see him and we're like, what is going on?
If he touches the field, you expect 3 points. Like, that's just
yeah. Exactly. He expects 3 fields. Like 3 points every time. He's like,
man. Man, absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. All right. I guess that brings us into gambling. Noah actually had a really good week. He went 10-6 for a total of 78, 98, and 3. I did not. I told you to fade me all weekend. I went 6-10 for 79, 97, and 3. I missed all of the games against big spreads except the Chiefs, who covered at 15.5. I was on my chair's edge the entirety of the game. The only one Noah missed as far as big spreads goes was the Bills, and he's going to take the Bills anyway. This week, Thursday night game, we made these picks on Twitter just in case this podcast comes out late, but both of us took the Bills at -4 against the Patriots tonight. So first game outside of tonight's game is Jets-Vikings. Vikings are 3-point favorites at
home. We just raved for like 20 minutes about Justin Jefferson, so I'd be remiss to go any different. I actually feel like three points is just actually really disrespectful to the Vikings, but I'm going Vikings all the way. Justin Jefferson is just too good to say no.
I'm with you. I think the Vikings are better than 3 points against the Jets, but I do think this is going to be a fascinating game, and it wouldn't necessarily surprise me to see the Jets cover or win the game, to be honest, the way Mike White played this past week. Have Broncos-Ravens. Ravens are 8.5 favorites at home.
I feel like that's pretty accurate at home. Again, we haven't seen the Broncos be the ideal team we thought they would be. I'm going to go Ravens here, although that's a pretty big spread, I feel like, for the Ravens.
Yeah, it's a bigger spread than I want it to be. I mean, the Broncos defense has been so good all season long, if we ignore last week. And then the Ravens losing this past week, I don't know that 8.5 is necessarily warranted. I'm going to take the Broncos, but I have to be honest, I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to stay with the Ravens, but I feel like there's a good chance you're going to take this. But I'll go with the Ravens for this.
It should be interesting if you're watching for spreads, at least. I can't tell you that it's going to be an interesting game, but I can tell you that watching for the spread's going to be interesting. Next game I've got is the Steelers and the Falcons. Steelers are 1.5 favorites on the road. For me, this one's pretty easy. The Falcons have been able to score all season long. As much as I love Kenny Pickett, I don't trust him to beat the Falcons, so I'm taking the Falcons at home.
I'm actually really surprised by that. I'm not gonna lie. I thought your faith in your boy there would help you. I got to go Falcons as well. But I also somehow could see the Steelers winning this one, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's just going to be a bumfuck of a game. Like not worth watching, but gambler. All right, I got Jags and the Lions. Jags are 1.5 favorites on the road. For me, this feels pretty easy. The Lions have been playing good football. I'm taking Detroit.
I want to take Detroit. I feel like this is just going to be, I don't know. Like, both teams last week played really well to a point where I feel like the Jags could win, but I'm going to stick with my gut and go Lions.
Yeah, I mean, if the Jags play the way they did last week, I mean, I think they're going to win the game. But I think if you're taking season-long sample as a whole, I mean, I think you have to trust the Lions more, especially if you're giving them a 1.5. All right, I've got Titans, Eagles. Eagles are 5.5 favorites at home.
Well, you said the Titans weren't bad, so it's gonna be interesting for you.
I'm taking the Titans. The Eagles' biggest struggle all season long has been against the run. Obviously, the Titans run the ball really, really well. I think 5.5 isn't giving nearly enough credit to Derrick Henry and the Titans. I'm going to take the Titans.
I'm gonna go Eagles here because I think the Eagles again, like I think the Titans are a one-dimensional offense. It's either Derrick Henry or there's like really no offense. So I think the Eagles can build around protecting that run game. So I'm gonna go Eagles here.
I've got the Browns and the Texans. Browns are 7-point favorites on the road. This one's only tough for me because it is Watson's first week in a season and a half. That being said, I think the Browns with what's his name? I said his name earlier. Their previous quarterback, Brissett. Thank you. I could see his fucking number 12. I couldn't come up with his name. I mean, I think I would take the Browns -7 with Brissett. So there's no reason for me to doubt the Browns at -7 with Deshaun Watson, and I think that's my only logic there.
My faith in Deshaun, so I got to go Browns here. First game against Texans, I expect them to blow them out.
Easy enough. I've got a division game, Washington and the Giants. The Giants are 2.5 underdogs at home. They've done this all season long. They're disrespecting the Giants. Look, I got a lot of faith in Taylor Heineke. I think he's the best quarterback in that system, but I don't think that makes Washington good. I'm taking the Giants, and I ain't thinking about it twice.
I too, I'm gonna go Giants. I will say though, quietly, the Commanders are 7-5, which is not where I expected them right now. So I will say Giants, but I do. After the performance we saw last week, I know what? No, I'm going Commanders.
All right,
fuck it.
All right, that'll be an interesting game. I mean, like I said, division games are always fun, but I think that'll be a good one. But I'm interested to see the Giants come back and play a team that's definitely not as good as the Cowboys. So I have Packers, Bears. Packers are 5.5 favorites on the road. Before we get too far into this, both of us said off the pod that we wouldn't have taken the Bears +6 if we knew they didn't have Justin Fields. As of yesterday, he was unsure if he would be able to play by Sunday. Even with that, may not be 100%. I think that's going to influence my decision to take the Packers instead of the Bears.
Agreed. I got to go Packers here. I don't think the Bears are in that competition just yet.
All right. I have Seahawks, Rams. Seahawks are 7.5 favorites on the road.
Yeah, I don't know.
We didn't see the best game out of the Seahawks this past week, but their offense is still super explosive. The Rams have sort of turned into that territory where they're just boring. There's no need to watch them. There's nothing significant going on. With the injuries and stuff they've got, I'm not sure that I can trust the Rams to keep up offensively to the Seahawks, so I'm taking Seattle.
Yeah, I gotta go Seahawks again. I feel like the Rams could definitely keep it within that, but I gotta go Seahawks here.
This might be my game of the week. Dolphins 49ers. Niners are 3.5 favorites at home.
I'm actually quite surprised by that line. Again, we saw the Niners put away the Saints last week, but it wasn't like a convincing win, I felt like, if that makes sense. Like, even though they shut them out, they did a good job. Like, it wasn't convincing to me to think that they could beat the Dolphins this week.
I'm with you because the Saints have won a few games that we didn't necessarily expect them to, but it's almost always been their offense that's keeping them in it. I don't think their defense is any big, strong, threatening force. And even though the 49ers defense was obviously good enough to shut out the Saints, like 13 points is not a whole lot to be proud of. I am super interested in this game because I realistically think it could go either way. But if the 49ers do that again on offense, I don't see them keeping up with Miami.
I will be. I'm just gonna point out the fact that we did point out the two key losses in the Niners defensive line isn't something that they're not like a weak defensive line. So I will say I'll be interested to see that. Having those two losses again, like for the Dolphins offensive line, I will go Niners here. I don't think I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins win this, and I won't be surprised if the Niners just don't put up a fight.
I'm super fascinated in this game. Genuinely, I wouldn't put money on this game just because it could realistically go so strongly either direction. But if we pick them every week, so we gotta. I have Chargers Raiders. Chargers are 1.5 favorites on the road. For me, I don't really give a shit. Is my big takeaway. Vegas obviously beat the Seahawks, which means that you can't entirely count them out of anything. But I think just, again, body of work season as a whole, I think we've watched the Chargers be a better team. So I'm going to take the Chargers. But again, who gives a shit?
Yeah, I'm going to take Chargers as well, just because to get that over with.
Yeah. All right. I have Chiefs Bengals. Chiefs are only 2.5 favorites on the road.
Interesting.
That one for me feels like big value. If you get the Chiefs to only win by 2.5, I recognize that the Bengals are good and it's going to be a good football game, but the Chiefs at 2.5 feels like value. I'm taking that for sure.
Agreed. I got to go Chiefs here.
All right. I have Colts Cowboys. Cowboys are 10.5 favorites at home. Fuck, I hate big spreads. Look, I don't trust the Colts at all. I think the Colts are at the point where their season is not one to be salvaged. I mean, by the time you lose to the Steelers, like, your season's kind of over. They're 4 games out for a division lead and no real hope at a wild card spot. It's hard for me to pick anybody but the Cowboys here, even though I fucking hate big spreads.
I'm just gonna keep the same trend. I gotta go big spreads. So yeah, Cowboys.
Yeah. All right, and then last game I've got is Saints and Bucks. The Buccaneers are 3.5 favorites at home. I've said it before. I'll say it again before season's end. I don't give a fuck about the NFC South. None of them matter worth a damn. I hate every game they play, and I won't be watching. But because I have to take somebody, I'm gonna trust Tom Brady and the Bucks, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean, take this game like a few years ago when Drew Brees was there, Michael. It would be a crazy game. It would be a great game, but again, like Kamara is the only real star on that offense right now, and I only think he can carry them so far. I got to go Bucks here.
All right, well, that runs us up for spreads. As always, lines are picked from FanDuel as of Wednesday this week and are subject to change. Please gamble responsibly. Remember that we're not providing gambling advice, solely providing our picks. If your loved one has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Unless you got anything else we missed, I think that sums us up for the week. So this will get posted to YouTube and Spotify. Yeah, Twitter was the only one coming to mind because I want to talk about the fact that, like I said, if podcasts post late, if something gets missed, schedules happen. We've been posting pics on Twitter, so you don't miss out on any of those. You can follow us both there. Otherwise, I think that sums us up, and we will see you guys next week.